There we go. Okay, so welcome everyone to our final week here in MPD. I was just telling everybody in attendance that tonight's session is going to probably be a little bit shorter compared to our previous ones, and the only reason for that basically is because of the fact that there's no new assignments due basically from last time to this time, with the exception, of course, of the discussion for the online students. But basically, though, we'll cover Project 3 here. But that being said, we won't go into as much detail. If you missed last week's session and you needed some tips and strategies on how to do Project 3, just go ahead and go to our YouTube page and go ahead and look at what we talked about last week, because all the information is there and we'll cover it, but just not in as much detail tonight here. And so basically what I want to do tonight for tonight's session is to, first of all, give you a couple reminders that remember the final discussion, of course, for the online students is, going to be due obviously on Sunday. And the topic this week is just to talk a little bit about your own personal media consumption and where do you think the future is, or where does the future lie in terms of publishing and distribution? In other words, do you think that we'll continue this kind of cycle of or the streak basically, where everything is kind of electronic now? Like, for example, I know a lot of people that don't even buy CDs anymore, they don't buy DVDs, and everything is digital. And do you see this as kind of a temporary thing, or do you think this is like the future, right? And talk a little bit about your own personal consumption. How have things changed? And you're gonna be hard pressed to find anybody who would say, "Oh, my habits have not changed at all in previous years." I think even in the on-campus students, I think we were talking last week a little bit about the fact that you have a lot more people these days that don't even have televisions, right? That was kind of unheard of about 6 or 7, 8 years ago. Everybody had a television, right? But today, a lot of people just watch TV on their computers, right? You have things like Hulu, you can watch Netflix on your computer. And so we're seeing more and more people that don't even have TVs anymore. So that's going to be kind of interesting to see, and talk about your own like music habits. Do you buy CDs anymore? Do you buy just MP3s, digital? And so just talk about where do you think the future lies ahead with that. So that's the discussion this week. Also, just a reminder, remember the blog postings are due tonight. So still have time if you haven't done those, but I think most people have. But remember, those are due tonight. You need one blog posting and one mastery journal posting. So just remember to get those in. And Daphne says, I was reading an article the other day of an author that got tired of writing because people do not read anymore. Yeah, that's true. And on that note, Daphne, actually, it's kind of interesting. We're seeing more and more of these modern texts that don't just include text anymore, because, like you said, a lot of people don't read, but they're like books, but they're enhanced books, right? So they have videos in them, they have audios and podcasts and things like that. And so that's something that you could talk about as well. And then just a reminder too, of course, Project 3 is due, at the end of this week. So we are in our last week. By the way, I don't know if Kim showed you guys this. Now that I'm thinking about this, let me go ahead here and bring this up. This is just for the on-campus students. Let's go ahead here and see if they have your schedules for next semester, or well, next month. I mean, not semester, but I'm not sure if Kim showed you this or not. Let's just see if they're up. They should be. Looks like. And so we can see where your next class is, what time it is. So let's just, and by the way, this is not set in stone. This could change possibly, but this is the preliminary schedule, so it should be correct. Let's just look at, okay, so looks like your class next month is a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and it looks like you're in 3F 111A, which is, I believe that's weird. I believe when you walk into 3F, I think that's like immediately like the first door that you come into, if I'm not mistaken. And it looks like you have a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday like this month, and it looks like you have a morning class next time, 9 o'clock. And with the exception of one day, I don't know why, but on Saturday the 21st, it looks like they're giving you 1 o'clock. Actually, it looks on that. No, I was going to say it looks like maybe you have a double that day, but I don't know why they would change the time like that. But anyways, that's your schedule for next month. So Kim will probably show you that too later in the week. But and then, of course, for you on-campus students, just remember too, a reminder that on Saturday's class is the go or the not the go to but the Google Docs presentation. So just do like you did before. You just have to come up there and just show the class some interesting links and articles and stuff that you found. And then for you online students, of course, you're obviously not doing a presentation, but just remember to continue on with the collaboration assignment, the Google Docs, and remember to keep posting for those things for whatever team you're on. Okay, so but just to recap for last week and what we'll talk a little bit about this week is Project 3. Remember just to follow this template. Remember that everybody has to follow this template no matter what team you're on or what subject matter you're doing, whether it's video games, whether it's films, whether it's TV, whether it's music, or whether it's books. You have to follow this format. So remember, the mission statement is not the mission of the company, but the mission of your project, whatever it is, right? The executive summary is just a little bit about yourself, a little biography. Remember, you can reuse some of the stuff that you did from projects 1 and 2, so that's totally fine. You don't have to worry about self-plagiarism for this particular assignment. Company description, that is the company. Remember, if you don't have a company, that's okay. You can be hypothetical for this. You can just make one up. You could just call this, so-and-so's publishing company or whatever it might be, right? Next is the product. This is the project itself, right? The book, the video game, the movie, the music project, etc. Next is manufacturing and distribution. Remember, your manufacturer and your distributor will oftentimes be the same exact company. Remember, it's going to be, in most cases, it's going to be your print-on-demand company, right? That's going to act as both your manufacturer and distributor. And remember, just like in the discussions from last week, they were all really, really fantastic. There is no right or wrong answer in terms of what's better than the other. It seems like, on the music side, most people prefer TuneCore to CD Baby. That was a very common discussion last week. But that's not to say that CD Baby isn't for you. I mean, what's good for one person might not be the best for another, and that's totally fine. So it's fine whatever print-on-demand company you use, just as long as you go ahead and explain that. Okay, and justify your decision, right? And in particular for this section 2, try to provide some stats, some numbers. This is where the research comes in, right? Try to figure out how much it's going to cost you per unit and how much money you're going to make per unit sold, right? You don't have to go into like all your financials and projections and things like that, like you did in the finance class with David, or some of you may have had Mike. But you don't have to go into that much detail here, but just, at least provide some information about the percentages of royalties that you're going to make and the amount of money that you'll make per unit sold. Next is marketing and promotion. That's what tonight's session will kind of focus on a little bit in the go-to session. And then finally, just a little bit of a concluding paragraph. Doesn't have to be that long, but just make sure you follow that format. And then also, if you'll notice here, when you open up the assignments, you will notice some other documents that we have here. Just real quickly, I won't go into all these in a lot of detail, but these are just 5 exercises to help you prepare for what we call the business strategy, but basically that's Project 3, right? So a lot of you have already been doing this, right? Researching print-on-demand companies. Try to find at least 5 target markets for your work. So, that could mean like you might have a primary audience, but you might have a few secondary audiences as well. That's totally fine. Number 3 is research competitor products. So this is where like your discussions from last week would come into play, because a lot of what you guys were doing, which is really good, by the way, is comparing, okay, this is what TuneCore will give me as opposed to CD Baby, or this is what Film Baby will give me as opposed to Distributor, right? Or whatever print-on-demand company you're using. But if you can offer some comparison and justification for why you're choosing one print-on-demand company as opposed to another, that would be really, really helpful for this. And then number 4 is just kind of a question, if applicable. A lot of times your distributor will be your print-on-demand company, but not that's not always the case. And if not, just explain who your distributor is and how you're going to get your product out there. And then number 5 is what Web 2.0 social media options can you use for marketing? And we'll talk a little bit about that here tonight. So, and then there's also some other things that we have here for you. You can look at what to look for in a print-on-demand company. This is a lot of, for you online students, this is just a lot of review for what you already talked about in last week's discussion, right? So a lot of you brought up the fact that you can keep your copyright with print-on-demand companies, where you can't if you go through the traditional publishing process. What types of distribution will you be able to have? In other words, what channels does your print-on-demand company offer you? And here's a whole bunch of questions that you can consider when trying to think about what print-on-demand company that you're going to use if you haven't decided that already, right? So that's a helpful document. And then now let's talk a little bit about the last few chapters. And so for you on-campus students, this is going to be partially repetitive because Kim will probably be talking about this a little bit more in next week's or on Thursday's class a little bit. But let's just briefly kind of cover some of the basics for it. Okay, so chapters 24 through 27, which are the last remaining chapters to take a look at if you haven't done so already. But chapter 24 talks about the micro ebook. And this is really, really important for a lot of you for Project 3 because, as an example, we probably talked about this before, but there's an author named Amanda Hawking who was just about your age, right? She was just a college student. Now she's a little bit older, but she started off by doing these micro ebooks, right? When we say micro ebooks, we're talking about like, not like full novels, right? Not like books like this, but just shorter books, novellas perhaps you could call them. And these were, as it says, ebooks, right? So they weren't printed physically. And so what she did is she tried to do what you guys did for projects 1 and 2. She tried to find an agent, and if you do this in real life, you'll find that it's very, very difficult to find an agent. That's what makes the query letter so important, is that you really need to stand out, right? But she tried and she couldn't do it. So she said, okay, I'm going to see about print on demand and I'm going to do it myself. So that's what she did basically, is that she used CreateSpace. Once again, this is not an endorsement for CreateSpace, but that's the one that she used. You can use something else, but she used CreateSpace, and she started doing these, selling her ebooks, her e-novellas, if you will. And she started off by, since they were micro books, she had a micro pricing system, right? So instead of selling them for the $15 for a book, she was just selling them for like 99 cents to $3. But here's the thing, though. With Kindle, when you go through CreateSpace and they give you the option to publish your stuff through ebooks, basically, and through things like Kindle, then your profits are about 70%. Now, that 70%, that may change, and it's going to change from print-on-demand company to print-on-demand company, right? Every company might be different, and it goes up and it goes down. But at the time, the royalty rates were about 70%. So you figure, if you're just selling a book for 99 cents, yeah, you're not really making a lot. You're making 70 cents out of that dollar. Or $2.99, you'll make like, little over $2 for that $2.99 book. So it's not a lot. But when you are starting to sell 500,000 copies, that adds up really fast, right? And she was able to kind of get a following basically by doing what you guys are doing for Project 3, right? So she said, okay, I'm going to self-publish it. I'm going to go through a print-on-demand company, and we'll start out small. Since these are micro books, we'll start out with a micro pricing model. And sure enough, she gained a following, and now she's made millions of dollars. I think I probably mentioned this, but the person that wrote, you know what? In fact, while we're here, let's just look this up, because I, just out of my own care, I haven't looked this up in a while. Let's go over here and let's look. I would say the person that adapted District 9 is actually adapting her book now, and that should be released later on this year. But let's find out for sure. I'm not finding it offhand. Wait, let me just do this actually. Yeah, I could go to Google, but let's just do this actually. This might be faster. I think it's her. Well, whatever. I'm not gonna. Um, well, okay. Since we're here, let's go ahead and Google it, right? And okay, there's her official website, and you can see here's an article if you want to check it out. The author who made millions by self-publishing. You can check that out later. Um, wonder if we can find her. Well, for the sake of time, I won't go to it, but she does have. I know that she wrote one of her books got turned into a movie that they're making right now. I'm not sure if it'll come out this year or next year, but anyways, here's her official website. And but the point of all this though is that she basically did what you guys did for projects 1 and 2, and she had a hard time finding an agent. So she's doing what she did what you guys are doing for project 3, and she was able to, like I said, become a multimillionaire. And in class, Kim will show you guys in class this video. You could just find it. I can't show a video here in the go-to session, but you can probably just go on YouTube and find some interviews with her where she talks about her strategy and what she did. And there's some other examples here that we have. Um, in chapter 25 is just about mass collaboration. Just a couple things to say about this is that Wikipedia is a great example of mass collaboration, right? Because they just put this site out there, and it's phenomenal how accurate the information is and how just informative a site like that can be just because of this idea of mass collaboration. Now, Wikipedia a few years ago had a reputation as being, very, very unreliable in terms of finding information. A lot of times people would just put up anything on there and just make up stuff. But they do have a kind of a screening process now, kind of a censoring process where they don't just let anybody put stuff on there. It's a lot harder to do, and a lot of in fact, they did a study recently, and they actually found out that Wikipedia is more accurate a lot of times than most, and more informative. Like the articles are longer than a lot of encyclopedias, a lot of real encyclopedias. So that just kind of illustrates this idea of mass collaboration. So that's kind of mass collaboration on the information side, but in terms of education and in terms of business, you can imagine how successful that it can be from those ends, right? So like one thing that they did here is they actually put this game up, the some type of science journal, or you could actually look at the article later, but they did this thing where they tried to like ask a bunch of these questions, like a bunch of medical questions, and they figured, well, this is a problem that needs solving, and we'll just ask the question, we'll just put it out there into the online community, and we'll probably be able to solve all the answers in several months. It turned out they were stunned because it turned out that just within a few days the questions that they asked were answered, basically, and it's all based on this idea of mass collaboration, people working together. um, just in the business side, this is kind of getting out of. Yeah, so Daphne says we cannot trust everything in Wiki. That's true. What we tell students a lot of times with Wikipedia is that how you go to a page, most of the information is probably going to be pretty accurate. But what you can do, because we tell people don't use Wikipedia in research papers, but what you can do is you scroll down to the bottom and you can look at the articles and get the external links, and then you can verify a lot of the information and just make sure that the information that you're getting is absolutely 100% correct, right? But just one final note though on chapter 15, this idea of mass collaboration. A lot of you, since in fact Daphne even brought up that you guys are getting close to graduation, just keep in mind that a lot of times when you're applying for jobs, you're going to be surprised these days to find out that a lot of the jobs that you're going to be applying for, they'll tell you, well, guess what though? You're going to be working in a virtual environment with virtual teams, because we're seeing more and more of this in the business world, where you have a lot of people, a lot of companies that say we have a great group of employees, but they're all in different parts of the world. Can they work together through things like Skype, through things like Google Plus or Google Hangouts, and through things like this? go to sessions and things like that. And we're seeing more and more of this. And you're going to be surprised how much you'll be working mass collaboration on whatever it is. We're talking projects or just, uh, you know, working in the business world just through this idea of mass collaboration and working with people from other states, other countries. And so it's going to be interesting to see, once again, how things kind of progress as we go into the future. So let's also look at chapters 26 and 27. This is where, with Project 3, some of the things that we'll talk about here, you could actually include for your marketing strategy. Like, obviously, you would want to have a Facebook page. You would probably want to have an official website for your project. Or let's just say that you're an author, you would want to have an official author site, right? It doesn't cost that much these days. You just go through different companies out there. Like, well, there's tons of different internet service providers or web hosts, I should say, that you can go through. And a lot of them are very, very cheap, so it doesn't cost you a lot of money. So you would definitely want to have like an official website. We showed you Kim's website last week, the infamouslady.com or whatever it is. I think it's, yeah, infamouslady.com. And for whatever you're doing, you would want to have at least an official author page or filmmaker page or music page, whatever it might be, or an official page for your project, whatever that is. So you would obviously want to use social media in that. Now, there's one thing I will tell you about. Kim will tell you a little bit more about this on Thursday for the on-campus students, but I'll just kind of introduce this concept now. It's very, very controversial, but you could conceivably do this for your marketing strategy for Project 3. It's something that's called stealth marketing or undercover marketing. And basically, what this is, to give you an example in the entertainment world, how film companies use this is they will go on IMDb, go on the message boards, and they'll really try to hype up certain movies or certain actors. And the idea is that people think that they're talking to just a regular movie fan off the street, right? Or in a different state or something like that. They think that they're talking to like a really enthusiastic, really knowledgeable movie fan. What they don't know is that the person that's hyping up these various products or these various movies is actually a paid marketer that's going undercover, that's putting on this persona that's basically using an avatar of a real person and basically trying to hype up products. So that's just one example in the movie industry, but they also use this in all kinds of other industries as well, where people create avatars. They go on Facebook and they hype up certain things. And to give you sort of a non-entertainment example, there's a video. In fact, you can look this up on YouTube. I won't go to it. I can't show you videos here, but let's just see if it's still there. You can check it out later. Just go to YouTube and type in 60 minutes undercover marketing. It might be called stealth marketing. Well, okay, there's a video. There's a clip of it if you want to take a look at it. And what they do here, it's kind of interesting. They look at these companies. It's specifically in New York City, but this happens everywhere. But what these companies were doing is that there's a tobacco company, for example, that didn't have a large advertising budget, and not only that, they had also had to deal with like certain advertising laws and rules that were in place where they couldn't just advertise their product on bus stations, or at bus stops and things like that, because there were certain laws in place. You can't advertise to minors and things like that. So they were kind of dealing with a lot of regulations and restrictions, and they didn't really have a large budget. So what do? They paid a bunch of these young kids, well, not young, when I say young kids, I mean like college kids, whatever, that would go to bars and basically have their pack of cigarettes out there. And the goal was to have everybody come by and see the brand that they're smoking. And even ask them, hey, can I bum a smoke or whatever? And the idea is that, and the same thing they do with alcohol companies. In fact, if you've seen a movie called The Joneses with David Duchovny and Demi Moore, they basically play this family, this fake family, that really all they are stealth marketers. So they go into a neighborhood, for example, and David Duchovny tries to impress his neighbors with a new car. And guess what? The next week or the next month, the new neighbors see, oh my gosh, that's a cool car. I have to get one. So they go out and they buy the same car. Or he goes and he plays golf with them, and he's got the new like Titleist or Nike driver. And all the neighbors are impressed. They're like, oh my gosh, I have to get that same cool driver. And what they don't know though is that he's actually paid by Nike or Titleist or Corvette or whatever it is to basically plug and promote and hype up these various products. And anyways though, it's called stealth marketing or undercover marketing. A lot of people find it ethically questionable, to say the least. A lot of people are against stealth marketing. They think it's dishonest. In fact, if you go to that 60 Minutes video, you'll even see where 60 Minutes tracks down these people that came or that were affected by stealth marketing, that went out and bought products because they thought that they were buying something that was really cool, and then they find out later on that the person that kind of convinced them to buy the product was an undercover marketer, and they're a little bit perturbed by that, to say the least. But nonetheless, though, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, I'm just explaining that it does exist, right? So that could even be part of your marketing strategy for Project 3. But I don't want to convince you one way or the other, because some people, again, are kind of opposed to it. They think it's a little bit dishonest. But nonetheless, though, in the entertainment world, these companies do this all the time, right? Or they go on, like in the 60 Minutes video, they also show how a movie company uses chat boards to do the same thing, really, to hype up all these movies that are coming out. And nonetheless, okay, so that's called stealth marketing. And Chapter 26 is about social games, apps, and virtual goods, right? So, like, obviously, you have games on Facebook, right? You have Angry Birds, you have, the Animal Farm one, different ones that are out there. There's new ones being created all the time, right? In fact, for you online students, if you want to go back to last week's discussion, Daphne actually had a, a few interesting sites that she pointed out that a lot of these companies or a lot of people can go on there and create these games, and they can put them on Facebook, or they can just create a website and have the games on there as well, right? So obviously we have games on Facebook, but the thing I want to point out here, you guys can read through the chapter later. I just want to get to this part right here, where a 14-year-old kid actually developed a game. Now he developed this game. It was called Bubble Ball, and it actually, as you can see here, it actually beat out Angry Birds for the top spot on the iPhone's app. Now he released this thing for free, but it had over 1.5 million downloads. So you couldn't just imagine, within 3 weeks, by the way, 3 weeks it had 1.5 million downloads. Now, if this kid was smarter, or his parents were smarter, they could have just maybe sold this thing for 99 cents or even 50 cents or whatever it might have been. And even if they didn't get 1.5 million downloads, it probably would have gotten a lot, right? And they could have made a lot of money doing it that way. So the point of all this, though, is that if a 14-year-old kid can do this, then there's no reason why that any of you can't do something like this as well. If you are advanced in computer apps and computer science and things like that, or even if you're not, you can go on and do the research, and you can find ways to develop things like this as well. And this is kind of a good segue into Project 3, though, because the point of Project 3 is to show you how you don't have to compete with Warner Brothers or Warner Music or Universal Music or whatever large companies are out there. You can develop stuff yourself, and you could be like Amanda Hawking and become a millionaire just by self-publishing your books, or you could be like this little kid and charge 99 cents for an app or for a download. And you don't have to compete with EA games or anything like that. You can make a lot of money doing it this way as well, right? And so here's some information if you want to take a look here. He used Corona SDK tool, which allowed users to basically, that's what he used to develop the game and put it on the iPhone, iPad, Android, things like that. And he was in 8th grade at the time. And there's an interview if you want to check this out later. Remember, all I'm doing right here is I'm looking at the slides that you can find on our resources site here, so you can copy and paste this into YouTube, or even just do a search for Robert Ney interview, and you could probably find him on there. And here's a site that you could check out, Mag Plus. And so here's some more information that you could find. There was one thing I was going to say here. Okay, well, actually, it's not on. It must be in an earlier chapter, I think. But one thing to point out before I talk about webisodes, though, is the fact that in one of our slides, maybe it's a previous chapter, Kim doesn't usually show the video in class just because it's a little long. It's about 30 minutes or so. But you can check it out if you want to. It's a free video on PBS's website, and I'll just type the name in the chat box here. It's called Revolution in Cairo, I believe. And you can just do a Google search on that, or just type in Frontline Revolution in Cairo. And it was kind of an interesting video because what it does is it shows how, everybody thinks of social media as being this tool where people can talk about like the latest restaurant they went to, or the latest movie that they saw, or the latest TV fads that are out there, their favorite TV show, things like that. It's not, but social media is not just a way to connect with people that you knew from high school, or it's not just a way to tell all your friends about the latest movie that you saw. Social media is a tool that's used by businesses. In fact, Eric Qualman, who I think we talked about before last week, but Eric Qualman wrote a book called Socialnomics, where he basically explains how businesses are losing out if they don't use social media to promote their stuff, to give customers a way to buy their products. And this video, Revolution in Cairo, takes a look specifically at what happened with, if you guys remember a few years ago in Egypt, there was a kind of a dictator there, not an absolute dictator, but kind of a dictator, basically, more or less, named Mubarak, right? And he was ousted by the Egyptian people. But here's the interesting thing, though. They tried to organize all these revolutions just by calling people on phone, by telling people in the street. It didn't work. It was only when they started using social media, in particular, they look at Facebook and also Twitter, but mainly Facebook. And it was only through the organization of these revolutions via Facebook where they were actually able to organize these mass revolutions that eventually led to the ousting of that Mubarak. And and so, yeah, as Val says, it was pretty interesting how they used it to fight against the political disparities in Cairo. Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, this kind of had a domino effect too, because not after Egypt, there was also similar revolutions that took place in like Tunisia, and some other countries around in that area too, as well. So the point though is that social media is a very, very powerful tool, whether we're talking about how it could be used in politics to organize rallies and things like that, or how it can be used in business to help get word out about your company through marketing and also through distribution, right? By having an official website where you can sell your products, or at least, at the very least, provide a link to like the Amazon page or the Barnes and Noble page where customers can buy, just simply click and buy your product that way. So, I mean, at this point, though, everybody kind of knows the significance of social media. So at this point, I'm not introducing new material to you. I'm just reiterating and emphasizing the fact that you definitely want to use social media in terms of promotion and getting word out about your product, right? So the last part is chapter 27 here, the last chapter, and this takes a look at the webisode. So this is another interesting case how this company, when I say company, I mean, well, the creators of this show tried to take their show to a regular network, right? They tried like HBO, they tried the other, like the regular networks. They couldn't sell it. They couldn't do things the traditional way. And this, by the way, was not just people right off the street. These were professional actors and actresses and directors and writers, and they produced this thing. In fact, the girl that stars in it is I forget her name offhand. I think it's on here, maybe not. Anyways, the show the show. Sorry for the profanity here, but I'm just saying the title. It was called Imaginary Bitches, right? And it stars, I forget her name offhand, but she was actually in the first American Pie movie briefly. She was at Stifler's party, um, but and she's been in some other things as well. And so that's the show. It's called Imaginary Bitches, and they produced this thing and they tried to take it to regular networks, and they all turned them down, right? So they said, well, we have produced this thing and we don't just want to like give up on it, so let's just put it on the web. Let's charge advertising money, or we won't even charge people like a subscription or anything like that, but we'll just make money through ads. And sure enough, they did this, and it was successful. And as you can see here, um, they produce this with very very minimal equipment, right? That's the other thing too about technology, is that the equipment keeps going down in price, right? In fact, if you guys are familiar with Robert Rodriguez, the filmmaker who did like him and Tarantino did Grindhouse together. He's also done like the Spy Kid movies. He did From Dusk Till Dawn and some other things. Anyways, he uses for his editing, big Hollywood productions, he uses the exact same computer that you guys are using now. He uses Final Cut Pro, and he uses like Adobe After Effects and things like that. So the software might be extra, but the point though is that he uses the same exact technology that you guys use, right? And that's one of the cool things also with making your own stuff these days, is that you don't have to have like multi-million dollar cameras and editing software and things like that. So the price keeps going down, and that's what they did for this show, right? And sure enough, they were able to do this, and it turned out to make a lot of money. There was also an example that Kimmel, and by the way, here's some other example or some other sources that you could check out. Uh, a lot of you have already talked about this in the last discussion. Like a lot of you talked about Film Baby, Distribber, but here's some other ones that you can take a look at. Um, and also, real quickly, I'll just point out that there was another little short video that these creators did. It was called Apple of My Eye. You can look that up on YouTube. And it's just a short film, and they did the whole thing on the iPhone 4, right? Just a little tiny phone, right? They shot it, they edited it, and they did everything with that phone, basically. So the point though is that the price of everything is going down, and we don't have to again rely on these huge multi-million dollar studios in order to get our content out there. And then just the last thing too, for those of you on the game side, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Angry Video Game Nerd. Um, you can look him up too. He's got a site called cinemassacre.com, and he basically did the same thing, where he did these funny videos where he goes back and he looks at so here, so I'll type in his name if you want to check him out. But just as a warning, Angry Video Game Nerd. Just as a warning, though, he's very, very vulgar and profane, right? So it's definitely R-rated material. But anyway, so he has this website called cinemassacre.com, and now they do other things besides video games. But it started off by doing like these video game reviews where he'd go back and look at these just atrocious video games from Nintendo, the original NES, and Super Nintendo and Genesis and stuff like that. And that's kind of his sort of that's what he does, is he looks at old video games and makes fun of them, right? But they're really, really funny. And he started just doing this for fun. But now, I mean, I don't know how much money he makes, but it's got to be a lot, because he's got lots and lots of advertising on his website. It's all free, but you have to watch ads, just like YouTube. You have to watch ads before you can watch the video. And now he's actually in production. He's got to be close to actually post production now. They're actually doing a video game or Angry Video Game Nerd movie, like a feature length movie that's going to be shown in theaters. And the plot, it's kind of funny. This is kind of getting off topic a little bit, but for those of you that are video game fans, you might know this, that back in the 1980s, Atari was making these video games, and there was kind of an oversaturation of the market. So they were just pumping out these games one after another, and they were going through and just releasing these games without really testing them. So there were all kinds of bugs, all kinds of problems. And anyways, the worst video game, they say, of all time was a game called E.T. for the Atari 2600. And the game was so bad that I kid you not, you can look this up on Google if you want and do the research on this, but the game was considered to be so bad and so awful that they could not sell the cartridges because nobody was buying them, because the reputation was so bad that they literally took the games and tried to make them disappear. So they took them. The story is that they took them out into the desert, like somewhere in Nevada or Arizona or something, and buried the games. So the plot of the Angry Video Game Nerd movie is that he's going to go and try to retrieve and find the games, basically, or something like that. But nonetheless, though, getting off on a tangent a little bit, but the point though is that he's a guy that basically started out by doing these webisodes of these video games just for fun, and now he's probably, I don't know how much money he makes, but it's got to be a lot, right? And we see this too with other people as well, that they start out by making YouTube videos and they turn it into a YouTube channel, and now they can make money doing it this way. So that's kind of what Project 3 is all about, is how can you take your idea with minimal money, minimal resources, and then turn that into a very profitable endeavor, right? So that's what you need to do for Project 3. So that's pretty much going to cover it for this month. I'll get to the attendance questions for the on-campus students here in a second, but unless there's no other questions, I'll go ahead here and I want to thank everybody for attending. Remember, it's still only Tuesday, so you still have several days to complete this for real. Um, so it's not due for a while, for a few days anyways, for Project 3. But just remember to get in the blog postings tonight. Remember to do the discussion for the online students. Remember to turn in Project 3 by the end of this week. And starting next month, you guys will have digital marketing with Kristen. And that's a really, really good class. I think you guys will really love it. And she'll actually talk some of the stuff that we've been talking about in this tonight here, the last few slides. She'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, and she'll talk about like web optimization and how you can, you know, use things like Google AdWords in order to help with the marketing side of things. So also so thanks Daphne, and thank you guys for attending. And then just one final reminder is to point out that if you guys do this for real, definitely let Kim and I know, because we'd love to hear about some of the projects that students really have done for real, in terms of whatever it is, in terms of publishing a book or in terms of getting their music out there, whatever it might be, right? So I want to thank you guys, wish you guys good luck in the next few classes. And as Daphne pointed out, you guys are almost done here, right? So not too much more to go here. And so let's get to the attendance questions. This is just, remember, just for the on-campus students. So the online students, remember, you don't have to worry about this. Why is my... Okay, there we go. Let me blow this up a little bit. So this is week 4 attendance. Remember, this is, a lot of this stuff is review. It's the same thing, right? So number 1 is, what piece of creative content will you be using? So this is essentially what you did for project 2, right? For most people, unless you changed it, which we don't advise you to do, but sometimes it happens. But what's your content? So in other words, is it a book? Is it a game? Is it a film? Is it a TV show? Is it a magazine? Is it a CD, etc., right? Okay, number 2, in the mission section, you should be discussing the mission of your what, and you could just put in there the project, right? That's all you have to put in there. It's the mission of the project. Okay, number 3, is it acceptable to use a real, hypothetical, or final project business for this project? And the answer is yes, absolutely. But it doesn't have to, remember. So it's great that if you do have a real project that you can do for this, that's wonderful. But remember that this could be hypothetical. So the point of this project and this class is to show you how you would go about doing this once you are ready to do it for real. But at this point, it doesn't have to be real. It can be hypothetical, right? Number 4, what is an aggregator or print-on-demand company? And the answer to this is simply the company that will help publish and distribute your work. So if you want to also put in there, it's the middleman. It's the middleman between you and the customer, right? It helps manufacture and distribute your work. So basically, in a lot of ways it takes the place of an agent, right? So the agent is the middleman in the traditional way. The print-on-demand company is kind of the middleman in the new self-publishing way. Okay, number 5, how will the POD be necessary for this project? Because it is going to help get your project to the customer. Basically, I mean, so the answers number 4 and number 5 are pretty similar, if not identical, right? It helps to get it acts as the middleman to get your product to the customer. So the answers number 4 and 5 are basically the same, right? Number 6, if you have a POD in mind already, discuss which one you'll use. So that's simply, on the music side, TuneCore, CD Baby. On the film side, Film Baby, Distributor. Also on the music side, you could say DistroKid is a good one too. On the game side, Steam seems to be the most popular one. On the book side, CreateSpace seems to be a very popular one, but also Lulu is on there. That seems very popular. Blurb, not so much, but that could be a good one too. So number 7, is it acceptable to reuse content from previous projects? Yes, absolutely. You certainly can. There's really no such thing as self-plagiarism in this class because we're talking about real life content. And in real life, you reuse stuff all the time. You use your query letter, you reuse that all the time, a lot of times. Change a couple things, change the names, right? In the real world as well, you'll use cover letters over and over again too. You'll just change the name of the company a lot of times. So this is a real world class, so it's totally fine to reuse some of the content that you used before in the previous projects. Okay, number 8, where can you find the templates and other resources provided? You could just simply say it's in the assignment instructions, right? It's right there in the assignment instructions. Number 9, is there a page requirement? The answer is no. I mean, ideally, the longer, the more information you include, the better, but there's no requirement. And then finally, number 10, are you required to double space and do APA? The answer is no. You can do any style that you want. In terms of citations, if you use citations, then you could just simply put the URL. You don't have to worry about the proper APA format or anything like that, right? Okay, and I think that will be it. So remember, if you happen to come in late or if you need to see this again, then this will be up on the YouTube page probably later tonight or tomorrow for sure. And of course, remember, for a little bit more information in detail about Project 3, if you want to look at some of the previous examples that students have done for Project 3, just go back to last week's GoTo session because that's where we kind of covered a lot of that in depth. So if there's no other questions, remember, if you do have any last minute questions, just feel free to send an email to Kim or I, and we'll be happy to let you know or get back to you. And of course, for the on-campus students, we'll see you in class on Thursday and Saturday too, for that matter. And other than that, I guess we'll say goodbye to everybody. Thank you guys for attending. Good luck in your next class with Kristen. I'm sure you guys will get a lot out of it. So I'm gonna say goodbye here and wish everybody a good rest of the evening, good rest of the week, and we'll see you guys later.